So this is what we are going to cover, right? Step by step. Let me give you a complete overview. Very first, since our machines are ready now, we would be installing Apache first, then Nginx. Then I will compare the paths where the files and folders are going to be kept, where the default home pages would be kept. Okay, the configuration files would be fairly different. Apache has got a very huge configuration file with all the comments into it, but Nginx had got it very small. You need to check Nginx documentations for adding the attributes. Jenkins is a server which is generally used for continuous integration. Okay, it's open source software that is freely available in the market, and bigger enterprises are also using Jenkins. We would be looking at how to set up Jenkins, how to set up security on Jenkins, how to have slave nodes set up on Jenkins, okay, how to create a job, how to configure it. Once we have the job running, we would be integrating that job with Subversion and Git. How to use Subversion and Git as source code management software, or SCM, for Jenkins. Okay, once we have the code from our SCMs, that means source code management softwares, either Subversion or Git, onto Jenkins, we would try to deploy that code onto Apache and Nginx machines. Okay, so this is what we are going to cover in today's class. Let's get back to our machines. I'm willing to start these ones. So we are starting Apache and Nginx. Okay, two machines side by side. Right side is Nginx, left side is Apache. On the right hand side machine, I'm trying to install Nginx, which is a two-step process. Very first, update your source code repositories if you haven't done so. Apt-get update. Double ampersand would help you to type two commands on one single line. Okay, so apt-get update is then followed by apt-get install Nginx. Okay, similarly on the left hand side, the package name for Apache is Apache 2. Okay, so our installation is done on both the sides. So let me show you what the default path is. Very first is the software running. Curl localhost would give you a CLI based browser on both the sides. I would try to hit curl localhost to ensure that the software is working. So I've got some HTML back. That means it's working. Now, where is the default home page kept?
Coding
On HTML side, sorry, on the Apache side, on the left hand side, the default path is /var /www/html, and at this location you would be finding a file called index.html. Whereas on Nginx, the path is a bit different. The path is kept at user share nginx html. Here you would be finding a file called index.html. Okay, 50x.html is a default file that would be shown in case of server-side errors. Okay, so there are multiple categories of server-side errors on both these softwares. Let me show you what the errors are. There are 5 different categories of errors. So the first category is 100 series. So under 100 series categories is for informational codes. Second series is 200 series. It is for success codes. Okay, then there is 300 series, which is for redirection. Then there is 400 series, which is for client side error, and 500 series, which is for server side error. Okay, you must have encountered a few of these series errors while accessing your browser. Generally, we see 200, which is okay, and we see 400, which is client side error. That means if you type in a wrong URL or a URI, you would be ending up with client error. Most probably you would be getting an error like 404. Okay, 404. 404 is file not found. If you are not authenticated to the server, you are typing in a wrong username and password, you would be getting a 403 error. Okay, 403 errors are very common with Subversion as well when you fail to type in your password correctly. If the server cannot understand your request, it is 400. So this complete list you can also find on Wikipedia. Okay, so there are multiple errors. This is a very long list of different kinds of errors that you would be getting. 100 category or 100 series errors are actually informational errors where you would be getting errors on whether you should be continuing with the request, whether you should be stopping with the request, whether you want to switch the protocols. And these are very rare kind of codes which are not usually sent to the browsers. All these codes are sent by the server to the browser, and browser would be acting according to it. That means if you are getting 200 OK, browser would be displaying that page on the screen, or will try to render it, or maybe if it is a file, it will try to download it. Okay, in 300 redirection errors, you must have seen some redirection like this, that 301 or 302. Okay, or maybe 304 is the most regular one. And how do you get the status errors? Let me show it to you. Get a browser. Okay, access any web page on it. Okay, hit F12, which would be bringing up developer tools. You can also check the developer tools from here. Okay, every browser has got developer tools on it these days. You would go here, check on the network tab, and if you see the status, everything is 200 OK for the first time. There is also 204. Now 204, refers to no content. That means this particular page is generating no content, so do not wait for it. Otherwise, the browser would be waiting for that particular page to load, and it would take too much of time just waiting for it, and the content would be null. If you refresh it, there would be some contents that would be generating 304 if Google has set it up. If not, let's check another website. Okay. All right. So few of these URLs are going to be 304. 304 means that the content is not modified. That's a good way of caching stuff, that and telling the browser that please check for this content whether it has modified on your end or not. Otherwise, I would be providing the content from my side. So the browsers would be caching all the files, all the static files and all the images that it downloads from the server. Okay, once it does it, it would be keeping it on its own cache. And next time it tries to request for the same resource, it would first check with the server whether the content has changed on the server side or not. Okay, so the header that it sends, actually you can also check the headers from this requests here. So the header that was sent is this. If modified since is the request that the browser would send onto the server to get 304 response back. Okay, so if 304 response is back, that means server is not going to send you any content, but at the same time browser would be showing the content from its own cache. All right, so you could get multiple status codes in here, and you could check it from any browser in the developer tools in the networks tab. So to summarize, how do we summarize this? This is 100 series is all informational code. 200 series is everything went fine. 300 series is you need to do something else. Okay, so redirect or use some other URL. 400 series is that client messed up. 500 series is server messed up. So whenever a client would be sending a wrong URL for checking or some authentication problem is there, 400 series would be the error code. Okay, and the 500 series errors happen if the server is doing something wrong. Maybe the methods are not implemented or there are some internal server problems. In that case, 500 error is generated. If method is not implemented, in that case you get 501 error. If the gateway times out, 504. Usually we come across an error called 503, which is service unavailable. Now in case of 503 error, um, your service really becomes unavailable due to DNS attacks. So a lot of the resources are already utilized on this machine, and the new request that a legitimate user or a real user is sending will not be processed. In that case, your browser would just say that it is unable to process the request right now. All the threads are busy, and it would generate a service unavailable error, which is 503. Okay. The extensive list of all these errors is available on Wiki. I will be sharing the link with you guys shortly after this session. Okay, so we were talking of Apache and Nginx and their home pages. Let me show it to you. So what the use case is currently? We have got two different servers, Apache and Nginx. We have some home pages set up on them. What we could do next is either we can change the home page directly into Nginx, or we could create a soft link or a shortcut for that folder at var www.html. Since we know that all the default home pages for most of the servers would end up in this location, I'm creating that folder and I'm creating a shortcut for that. Okay, so I would say first create a folder called www. Okay, and the next thing is create a short soft link. So the command is ln -s, and the folder where all our home pages would be kept is user share nginx html, and keep it at var www html. Okay, so let's see if that folder is now created. You see a folder called html, and this html folder is actually a link which would be pointing to another folder. That means user share nginx html. If I jump to this html folder, now my current path is var www html. I should be able to see index.html as well. The reason why I did this, because I want homogeneous configurations on both these machines, Nginx and Apache. Whenever I am trying to deploy my code, I would be just firing one single command that the code should be deployed to this particular path. Now there are differences between the paths in Nginx and Apache, but my deployment path should be the same. Okay, that's why I've created a soft link. Okay, so let's see what's we could do next. I want to deploy my code. All right, I want to deploy my code on both of these machines. So what I would be doing is I would be copying the code onto these machines. For copying the code, I would be using a command called rsync, which is an utility in Linux that helps you copy the files and folders from one machine to another machine, and even from one machine to itself. So before doing that, we would be looking into one more tool called Jenkins. And in Jenkins, you would be setting up all these tasks, okay, which are called jobs. So you'd be creating a deployment job in there, and we would be asking Jenkins to do the deployments for us. Very first, you'd be trying to do it manually as well, and once it is successful in the manual phase, we would be automating that using Jenkins. Everyone clear of what is going to happen? At any point, if you think that it is going fast and you're not able to keep up, please type in your chat boxes, okay, or unmute yourself and ask me to go slow, because I'm trying to move as slow as I can. All right, but the stuff is you should be getting what has been covered here. Okay, so I need another machine here. I will call that machine as Jenkins. Power it up. So we are going to look into the continuous integration phase now. All right. Currently, we have got the support systems up. We have got DNS and DHCP ready. We have our web servers ready. Okay. We have also learned about Subversion and Git. Now it's time to integrate all these stuff together in one single module, and that module is called the Continuous Integration Module, or CI. I am using Jenkins for that purpose. Very first thing, create your machine, make it ready, and how to install Jenkins on this box. For setting up in Jenkins, you'll have to follow the steps on the Jenkins website itself. So let's bring up a Jenkins website. Just type in install Jenkins on Ubuntu. On Google search, it would be giving you a list of different results. Choose the one which comes at first, and the URL is jenkinsci.org. Would be following these steps to install Jenkins. Very first, add a key. Second line says that create a source list for Jenkins. Third one is the regular one apt-get update, and the fourth one is also the regular one. You are aware of it, apt-get install, and the package name is Jenkins. The benefit of using installing Jenkins by this way is that you get to install services as well. So you could simply type in service Jenkins start, service Jenkins stop. Users are also created automatically. The folder structure is created automatically. Another way is to download the war package. When we download the war package, we can run it ourselves by typing in Java command, java-p var, and whatever the war file is. So let's not go there. We would be installing Jenkins by using these 4 simple steps which are mentioned here on the screen. Okay, so step 1. For this, I need a client. I'm using an SSH client to connect to this machine remotely. Okay, so this is the first time that we would be using SSH client to connect to this box. What are the prerequisites? The prerequisites are that I need a package called OpenSSH installed on Jenkins. Okay, if you remember, while creating a template, whatever template you might have created, you have also installed a package called OpenSSH server there. Okay, if you haven't, please install it. The package name is git install OpenSSH hyphen server. Okay, that package is mandatory to be present on all the machines, otherwise you will not be able to access those machines over the network. You will not be able to connect them remotely. That's what I meant to say. So instead of installing this package on each and every one of these machines, you will have to install it directly on the template first, so that the package gets installed on all these machines altogether. So get to root and apt-get install OpenSSH server. So it will set up OpenSSH server on your machine, which will allow you to connect to this box over the network. Alright, in my machine it is already installed. If you are not able to connect to this box, probably this is going to be the problem. Okay, fix it. So to connect to this machine, I need the IP address of this machine, 56.147.192.168.56.147. I'm using my SSH client from my base machine, which is Windows. Okay, so this is the tool that helps you connect to these Linux machines over SSH from Windows. So I'm using this. You could also change the appearance. So I'm changing the font so that it becomes more visible. Open, and it would give you a prompt like this. Alright, so step number 1, add a key. I'm just doing copy paste from those steps. Nothing fancy. Okay, nothing that you need to remember. Alright, step 2 finished. Step 3 and step 4. Apt-get update. Since we have added a new source listing, we need to update that. Alright, so apt-get update finished. Next one is apt-get install Jenkins. Even if Jenkins is available online and we can download it directly as a package as well, but it is not provided with Ubuntu with in the default package listings. That's the reason we are adding it all by ourselves. So by the time this installs, let me cover up a query here. The query here is from Murli. May I know the differences between Nginx and Apache? Alright, so let's revise the differences between Nginx and Apache one more time. So Apache comes in two modes, which is worker mode and pre-fork mode. Whereas Nginx comes in general architecture where workers are listeners. Now the problem here is with Apache, it is synchronous in nature. That means every request that comes in, that request would be given to one single process, and that process is responsible for executing any of the dynamic contents or dynamic code which is required by that particular request. Okay, and Apache comes in with multiple modules. So there are modules for running PHP, there are modules for running Java, Python code, and all these modules allow you to run your code in synchronous way inside that particular process. So let's say the request came in on a particular port. The request was detected by Apache parent, and then it was assigned to a particular process. The process would trigger the compiler. Maybe if I'm running a PHP code, it would trigger the compiler all by itself. It would load all the modules. So this process here, that getting a request, triggering the compiler, initializing all its modules, running the code, getting the response, scrubbing of the compiler, and returning the response back. This happens every time a request is generated. But the overhead here is starting the compiler and scrubbing it off. Okay, every time that happens, the memory footprint that is required by Apache increases. So the number of worker processes you have is increasing. The amount of memory directly multiplies the amount of memory that you need on a particular machine. That's with Apache. What happens with Nginx is it is asynchronous in nature. So asynchronous means the architecture defines the way Nginx would work. The architecture is that we have discussed this in previous class, where there is a master process which is responsible for keeping all the worker processes up. Okay, worker processes are just listeners. They would be listening on a particular port, preferably on port number 80. Any request that comes in would be picked up by either of the workers, and it would be assigned to a thread, not a process. So this thread can share the data between other threads as well. Okay, so the compiler that is used by Nginx is actually not a synchronous compiler. It is not loaded inside a process. Every thread is responsible for generating its own response. Okay, it is not handled by the workers at all. So as soon as the request is coming in, the worker would be spinning up a new thread, and it would keep on listening for the new request. Okay, so your ports are not blocked. It's very rare that you would be getting 503 errors on Nginx, but you would be getting it most of the time on Apache. Apache can get into deadlocks, whereas Nginx cannot. Okay, it's a foolproof area where Nginx does not run into deadlocks because the resources are kept apart from it. It is an asynchronous process, right? The compilers do not block anything. Compilers would be running separately, so you don't have to go through the process of starting, initializing, and destroying the compiler after every request. because they are running standalone. All the requests would be sent to the compiler and a response would be received back, which is much more faster than Apache. Nginx have got their internal proxy and have also got internal caching mechanism. Well, Apache has also got internal caching, but it is not as extensive as Nginx. With Apache, you don't cache all the pages which are coming in. You'll be very specifically telling that, okay, I need to cache this one, I need to cache that one. In Nginx, it caches all the static resources that are coming in by default. So the initial footprint of Nginx can be a bit higher if it caches all the static files, but after that, if you calculate per request memory footprint that is required, it's very small. Okay, Nginx can run a few MBs of RAM, whereas Apache would be loading all your dynamic modules and the objects that your code requires into memory, which would be eating up a lot of memory. But Apache is really good at serving dynamic content. Okay, whereas Nginx is good for serving static files. Now, static files could be your um, CSS files, JS files, or it could be an image, okay, JPEG or PNG files. Uh, any of the small files and folders that you want to share over the network, you could use Nginx for that. Well, Nginx is not good for streaming. Although you could use it, Apache, you could also use Apache for streaming purposes, but generally people don't use Nginx and Apache for streaming. We use light HTTPD for the streaming purposes. So various web servers are out there, and we would be choosing one according to our requirements. So let's say if you have a requirement that one single dynamic page request would be generating you hundred of different static file requests, better go with Nginx. But if you have all the dynamic contents to be served, that means just in case of an API where you would be getting all the dynamic requests, okay, you are not serving any of the static content over the API servers. In that case, go with Apache. Okay, so there's a trade-off over what to use, what not to use, how much you're spending on the memory side, how much you're spending on your caching side, when you would be choosing between these wisely. All right, I hope that solves the query, Murli. Okay, so I was talking of Jenkins, where Jenkins has been installed, and as soon as Jenkins is installed, you would be getting a process which is using port number 8080 as its default port. Okay, and it would be used for displaying a Jenkins dashboard. If you want to check whether it has been started here or not, you would be typing service Jenkins status to know whether it is running or not. So your Jenkins integration server is now running with some process ID or PID 1534. In your case, the PIDs would be different. And if I want to check whether my port is been blocked or port is being in use, port number 8080, so I would be typing in the command netstat check for TCP UDP listening ports, show me the process number TULP, okay, give the port number as one, and the process uh, command which has started that particular process. And then I would be passing this output. Okay, so output of this command now I'm passing to another command which is grep, and I want to grep only the lines that has got colon 8080 in their output. So if you see, there is a Java process that is blocking the port 8080. So the question here from Murli that can we say that Nginx server is a web server? Yes, Nginx is a web server as well. So here with Jenkins, we have got port number 8080 being used. So I would be using the same port number to connect from my browser onto this machine. Check the IP address of this box. It is 56.147. What I'm going to do next is I'll be connecting to this machine from my browser. 192.168.56.147. Port number is 8080. And this is the default Jenkins dashboard. Alright, so Jenkins dashboard looks like this when there are no jobs being created. We are going to create a new job on it. I'd be clicking on create new jobs, or I could click on the new item to create my task. Remember that we wanted to create a task that would help us fetch the code from our SCM, and at the same time would be able to deploy the code onto our servers that we have just created. So where is the SCM? Do we have the SCM machine? Let me see. No, we haven't got the SCM machine now. So what I'll do is I'll first connect it with some repository provider so that it becomes very fast. So the repository provider we are going to use today is GitHub. Okay, so this is the default page for GitHub. Why I'm using GitHub in the first place? Well, I don't want to set up my own Git server. Okay, that's the only reason we are using GitHub. In your environment or in your organization, if the organization uh, wants to collaborate across the globe, okay, and they are willing to spend a few bucks in exchange of nice UI on the browser, they can pay GitHub for storing the repositories. There are other providers for Git software as well. One of them is called Bitbucket. Yet another is called GitLab, which is open source version of GitHub. So for registering, what you could do is you could sign up for your own account. I already did that, so I would be signing in. Sign in with your credentials, and now you could create your own repository if it doesn't exist. So I would say I want to create a new repository by clicking on this button here on the top right. I could say my repository name is my git test. So that's my repository name. It's available. Some description. So using this for Jenkins and Git integration. Okay, you could make it private so that other people are not able to see it or even commit to it. Okay, but if you want to make it private, you'll have to shell out a few bucks. So I want to keep it free, so I'll keep it public for now. Doesn't matter. I just need a Git URL using which I would be able to commit to this particular repository. That's it. So you could use HTTPS URL here or SH URL as well. With Git, we have always seen SH URL in our examples, right? HTTPS is not a default way of connecting to Git. It's provided by these providers here. So you could use HTTPS URL as well. So let's try this time with HTTPS. What I need is I need a client machine using which I would be connecting to this box. That means the GitHub box. Uh, I would name a machine as client, which is my developer machine. Spin it up. Okay, is everyone clear with what we are doing? Okay, is everyone clear with that? Bharat, Deepak, Krishna, Murli, Nagarjun, Raghunath, are we clear on what's happening? Please let me know if it's not clear. Here, I've just spent a client machine which I'm using as developer machine. On this developer machine, we would be getting the code down. That means I'm going to check out my repository, and at the same time I would be creating a new file called index.html. I want that file to be deployed onto my machines, on both of my machines, okay, on Apache as well as Nginx. I want to deploy the code using one single command. That was the reason why we created soft link on Nginx, so that the path on Nginx and the path on Apache remains the same. Let's do it now. On the client box, I'm trying to check out the repository. So the command is git. Is git installed? No. Let's install git. Apt-get update and apt-get install git. We're installing git on the client side. Okay, so we are not going to configure it like the server side we did. On the server side, we have first created a group, then created a user, then installed git, set up a repository, okay, assign that repository to the user, and then we have used it from another machine. Here we don't need to do all of that stuff. I have installed git, type in git, okay, it works. The command is git clone, and git clone from the URL that is mentioned here, okay. So the URL is github.com/myname/my repository name, https github.com/username/repository name.extension. Clone it here. Okay, so it says you appear to have cloned an empty repository. Now we are familiar with this warning, right? Okay, get into git test, create a file index.html, and we say that this is a Jenkins test, save it, and then we are going to push it back. Before pushing, set up your configuration, git config, global scale. I want to set up my user.name to my username. It's git config global user.name. Alright, so there have been a mistake in the command. Now it works. Another one is user.email. Worked. So what next we are going to do is git add index.html to the staging area. So it would add the files to the staging area. It's added. Then next is commit -m to the git server, and with the message initial git commit. Okay, so it has committed it locally, and now we are going to push the code back. Command is git push to origin and to the master branch. It would ask me for my username and password. Type it in. Wonderful. So it has pushed the code here onto GitHub, and I should be able to see the file. There's my file index.html, and the content is this is Jenkins test. Okay, so our code is on the server side. Yes, Raghu, master branch is the default branch. If you want to branch it out, then you could create new branches for all by yourself. Whenever you commit the code for the first time, it lands up in the master branch. Now, the next step, we have the code onto the repository. We want to check it out on Jenkins. Okay, so that Jenkins is able to deploy it. So let's create a job on Jenkins. Creating a job is as easy as adding new item here. Okay, but I will first get into the problem and then we'll try to solve the problem. Git test is what the job name is going to be. Now there are four different kinds of jobs. Usually we use the first type, which is freestyle project, that has got all the configuration settings so that we could configure the job according to our will. It is a free flow or freestyle kind of project. So any of the plugins that you have installed on Jenkins would be available there. You can configure them. Jenkins is like a framework. Jenkins doesn't compare with any of the softwares out there. Like if you're comparing it with TeamCity or you are comparing with Bamboo, where these softwares are actually proprietary softwares and their feature list is limited. With Jenkins, Jenkins is more of a kind of a framework. Okay, so what I mean by a framework is that whenever you use Jenkins, you would find that there are very less features in it. But as and when you install a plugin that you need, Jenkins would be providing more features to you. Okay, so Jenkins does not provide any feature by default. Jenkins actually ships with pre-installed plugins that would help you set up all these things. So these options are also presented by plugins. By default, Jenkins is a bare framework that has got no features. So I'd be starting with freestyle project. Another type kind of projects are if you want to customize your project for a Maven code or a Java code. In that case, you would be choosing Maven project. You can also set up Maven project in freestyle project. Okay, I'll show you when we cover the Maven part. External job is when you want to trigger some another job from within this machine. That means there are two installations of Jenkins. I have the installation on which I'm working, but from this installation, I want to trigger or I want to start, stop, or update a job onto another machine or onto another installation. That's the case where we would be using external job. The fourth one is multi-configuration job, where the scenario is something like this. I have a software that I want to build with multiple environmental parameters. So let's say we have a code and we want to deploy that code on Ubuntu. We want to deploy that code on CentOS. We want to deploy that code on Mac. Now the code is maybe some security code that needs to be built as a module. Now every software or every operating system that is out there has got their own packages, right? You don't download .debian file for Windows. You just download .exe for Windows, .deb for Ubuntu systems, .rpm for RHEL machines, and so on. So you need to package them according to those operating systems. So that is when you use multi-configuration project. This is an advanced level system where you'll be providing multiple configurations for the same job, and it would be executing itself with those multiple configurations and generating the results according to that. Okay, we are going to use freestyle project where we could tweak everything which is available in Jenkins. All right, so let's see how to do that. Freestyle project is the one that I've selected. Click on OK. Move ahead. It would provide you with some options. So the options are in source code management. We have an option for subversion. We don't have an option for Git. Okay, I will not cover all these options at once, but we'll keep coming back to the screen and cover all these options one by one. So the first things first, we want the code to be checked out. For checking out the code, I see that subversion is present, but Git is not present on the list. So like I said, features are limited, but you would be increasing the feature list by downloading the plugins. So the first step is to install a plugin for interacting with Git. Okay, rest of the things we would be covering in a short while. So I say save this job for now, don't start it. I want to install Git integration with it. So for installing Git integration, click on Manage Jenkins. On the left hand side, it would take you to another screen where you'll be finding an option for managing plugins. Click on manage plugins. There are 4 different tabs. Out of these 4 different tabs, available section would show you all the plugins which are available with Jenkins. Installed section would show you all the plugins which are pre-installed with Jenkins. So you would be looking at multiple plugins which comes directly with Jenkins. So these plugins are shipped with Jenkins installation itself. We want Git integration, so I'm looking into the available section for my Git plugin. So there might be multiple plugins that provide you with the similar features. It's all up to you which ones to choose. Okay, so I'm choosing Git plugin, which is more famous, and I have tested it. So I'm using Git plugin for interacting with the Git servers. I'll wait for some time for this to finish, and then I would be restarting Jenkins by clicking on this checkbox. It would take another few seconds for finishing.
Yeah, hi, Ashish Modi here.
Hey Murli, can you be a bit louder?
Yeah. So like I have a casual question like what are the daily roles and response to this if you were in like DevOps teams like what exactly?
The only responsibility that you have is automation, and to make sure that automation works without any human interaction. Okay, so
Okay.
that would fall in different categories, and you'd be taking care of it.
So
Uh,
all the day like we need to work with tools, multiple tools. That's it, I guess.
yes, multiple tools, but that's not the
Yeah.
sole responsibility for a DevOps person. The responsibility is to have automation running. So it could be with help of tools, it could be help of some customized scripts that you would be writing.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Usually in bigger teams, you would be responsible for one specific section, maybe for CI or CD. Even in the continuous delivery part, you would be maybe responsible for just spinning up infrastructure or to take care of the nodes or to set up
Okay.
the Jenkins server and handle those things, or maybe a
Okay.
master in Puppet
The
or
thing
Shell.
is, my question is like we should not be like geek in all tools. Like they will segregate, I guess. Like they'll segregate like few people to one tool. Like in that way they will segregate. In a team, like we need to know all about perfectly like on all tools.
Yeah, you should be aware of all these tools in a team as well. But the day-to-day
Okay.
activities, it's just the maintenance part.
Okay.
It's
Okay. Like
just
kind of
maintenance
admin
and
you're saying.
yeah, exactly. We are going to just look at the dashboards, figure out what's wrong, what's right, and what has to be done. At the same time, we would be
Okay.
also looking at optimizing the stuff. Okay, so DevOps is
Okay.
not a one-time activity, although the installation would be one time. Since we are not developing any features on day-to-day basis, we would be setting up all these things on day one itself, try to figure out
Okay.
whether it works or not. Once it works, it's all about
Okay.
keeping it live, keeping it running.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we
So
would be looking at optimizing it as well. Maybe the tools have to be changed, or the statistics have to be changed, new modules have to be built. So all
okay.
those kind of stuff.
The like thing is like we'll need to work on any tickets like IMCs or change requests like PM like any problem management like we need to use any tools like ServiceNow or like any DMC to work like
Yes, that could be the case. Okay.
Okay.
But generally the tickets are raised not from the clients but from the production people themselves, that
Yeah.
maybe IT team raises a ticket or a developer raises a ticket for you. So
Okay. Okay.
those tickets are not client facing tickets, but you need to be aware that what's happening on the production side. Maybe you generate a ticket for yourself, and that every time um, there's a problem on the production side, there would be no one else knowing that there is a problem except for the DevOps people. So the even if they are working in agile environment, what I've seen on a regular basis is that no one generates a task for the DevOps people. They have to be on their toes to generate it for themselves. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Usually the sprints don't define what you're going to do in day-to-day basis because it's all ad hoc, all real time. You cannot predict what is going to happen the next minute.
Yeah, like as my like my experience, like I was like I worked as a website admin. Like I used to get like multiple tickets from from dev. Like I used to store tickets from dev servers, and I used to work on even UET, and I used to work with prod, and used to work with call servers. Like say, I used to get like multiple tickets from like different environments. In this, it like the same way, like here we are like separate team for development, like for dev servers, and there will be separate team for UET. Like what exactly?
No, usually we don't separate out the teams based on the environments. Okay.
Okay, okay.
We separate out the teams based on the roles.
Oh, oh, oh.
Okay. So
Mm.
DevOps is an end-to-end architecture and end-to-end a system where people would be knowing all about it, from starting from the developed machine to the production systems as well. Okay, so we don't separate out the teams, like UAT would be one. In that case, you would be creating different silos and you're creating hierarchies, which is against the culture of DevOps.
Okay. So we need to work with like developer, like what I call the developer teams. Like if for example a developer brings with a latest build version, it comes with a latest build version for an application. So
Mhm.
like we need to deploy that particular application, and like these sorts like our daily activities.
No, that's not a
What
daily
exactly
activity.
like?
That's setting up the stuff at once. Okay, we set up all these
Oh,
mechanisms one time. Okay, in the beginning, and then whenever
okay.
the developer would like to commit or maybe
Mm-hmm.
deploy, that should happen automatically. That's what the end goal
Mm-hmm.
is.
Okay. Yeah,
We don't want to be human keyboard, so we don't want people to uh, just to disturb us or keep asking questions that where is my code, how it has to be done, or something like that. We want to make it as easy as possible for them so that everything can be happen from a single trigger. Developers should be aware of everything.
yeah.
So we are not the people who are
Yeah,
going to
like our
tell them.
thing is like our motto is yeah. Our motto is like just triggering a job like whatever they ask, that's it. You know, like in a machine.
Yeah, and that should be happening
So
automatically even.
yeah, that using tools we need to trigger a job, that's it.
Right,
Whatever the request comes from a different teams. That's it, I guess. No?
exactly. But there are a lot many things that happens in between
Yeah.
when the pipeline starts. Triggering is just the first
Yeah,
step
yeah,
of it.
yeah. Got it.
All right.
Yeah,
So
thanks actually. That's it.
you're welcome. Here at the job end, we have just created one job and we have installed the Git plugin. Now let me show you that. I'm clicking on the configure button again. So we'll be looking at job configuration, the same familiar screen, but this time we have got Git as an option. Okay. Earlier we had got Subversion, just Subversion. Now we have got Git. So I'd be placing the Git URL here. Git URL is https github.com and my repository name is git underscore test. Right now it says that it has failed to connect to this repository because something hasn't worked. It was unable to fire this command git ls remote -h from this machine. So if we are not able to fire the command, that means git is not installed. Is git installed here? No. So let's install git. So people might ask, if Jenkins is there to automate, why do we need to set up all these things? Well, Jenkins can automate only the stuff that we can handle manually. If you're not able to do it manually, Jenkins cannot do it for you. It's as simple as that. Because in the background, Jenkins would actually fire the commands. It would use shell to do all these things. So for that, first we'll have to take pains in setting up the things manually. Then tell Jenkins that, okay, I've set it up manually. Now you take care of it. So now Git works. All right. So Git works. Now this should take care of itself. Credentials, I don't need any credentials on the public repository. What else do we need? Okay, so that's the SCM part. It would help us to get the code down. Okay, apply on it, we'll save, then build now. It should get the code from the server onto the disk. Okay, if it is blue, that's success. If it's red, it's a failure. So currently says it's a success. What is the workspace? Workspace is a folder which would be keeping all our code. So you could go to the workspace and check your files. So currently the file is index.html, which says this is Jenkins test. That means the code has been taken from GitHub. Okay, the remote repository. Alright, but this is not all. We want that the job should be triggered as and when the developer commits. It should be automatic. So let's configure it to be automatic. There's an option called build triggers. We have seen the option SCM. Now the next we are trying to look into the option called build triggers. Now there are three different kinds of triggers. Trigger number one, it is based on other projects. So if project A succeeds, project B should start automatically. So you are creating build chains or job chains. Okay, so that's for the job chain. Since we don't have any multiple jobs, we could skip it. Otherwise, if you have job A or something like that, you would simply type in your job name, and after job you could choose whether you want to trigger this current job and what are the conditions in which you want to trigger it. Whether you want to trigger it only if it is stable, that means it is a success, or a failure, which is unsuccess, or unstable, that means the build was successful but the tests failed. Now this option can be found only with Maven or Ant projects. So I will not click it for now. Another one is to build periodically. If you want to run this job maybe every 5 minutes, okay, regardless of if someone commits or not, even if there is no change on the server side, if you want the job to execute, in that case, now there can be multiple reasons why you want to do so. Maybe the server is not taking the code from the remote repository, it doesn't require code, but it is only trying to check on a particular machine, or it is executing some batch process in the background. Okay, any different use cases might be there, or maybe it is just triggering some another script, who knows. So if that is the case, we would be building this job periodically. But in my case, this particular scenario, if there is no change on the STM side, we don't want to run the job, we don't want to waste the resources. So I'll say keep polling the SCM, keep a check on the source code management software, whatever you are using, and check it every minute. Now what the syntax is? Syntax help, you can get it from the question mark, which is present here on the right hand side of all the text boxes. Click on it. It would give you a syntax which is very similar to the cron tab syntax. Okay, we will be covering cron tab in the coming modules, but here these 5 stars would be representing minute, hour, day, month, and the week. Okay, so minute star can be having values from 0 to 59, or star. Stars means any. Hour would be taking values from 0 to 23, which is a 24-hour duration. The third star is the month, day of the month star, which starts with 1, ends with 31. Fourth one is the month, 1 to 12, and fifth one is the day of week, which is 0 to 7. Okay, where 0 and 7 are Sundays. Well, we'll look into detail of how this works, but for now, if I'm placing a star, that means it's every minute, every hour, every day, any month, and any weekdays. So it will checking my SCM every single minute. So let's do it and then apply. So we have triggered this job to happen automatically. Number one was triggered automatically. What about number two? For starting number two, I wouldn't be clicking on build now. I want that to happen automatically. So let's check it. We need a client machine. On this client machine, we have already a file called index.html. I'm opening this index.html. I'm making a change. Now this change should trigger a job on Jenkins. Jenkins test for a job trigger. Okay, save it, git add index.html, git commit index.html with a message testing auto trigger. Okay, and then get push to the remote repository. So it has pushed the file. Let's check if it is reflected here. The file is now refreshed. What about on Jenkins? We will wait for a minute because we have configured it to run every minute or so. Okay, so we'll wait for a few seconds for this to finish. And we should automatically see a number 2 job above number 1. So if you see number 2 is now pending in the quiet period, it would execute itself and it would finish with some success or error code, whatever it is. So it has finished with a success code, blue dot, that's a success. Okay, so the jobs were triggered automatically. Now this is your starting point, and you could add as many build steps as you want in between. So what do you want to do with the source code now? Once your job is triggered automatically, what do you want to do with it? What do you want to achieve with it? Do you want to execute some tests, some checks, compile it, test it, package it, build it, deploy it anywhere? Okay, so it's all up to you now. So let's first configure this. If you see that there are multiple jobs being executed, now currently we don't have that much of code, but let's say I have 1 or 2 GB of code and we are packaging it, keeping it somewhere. Now every time the job executes, we would be spending almost 100 GBs or so, for example, for keeping our packages. The end artifacts, okay, the end products of our complete job would be a package or would be the code which we are going to deploy. Now these end products are called artifacts. Okay, now these artifacts you'd be keeping locally onto the disk, but it would take up some space. If you run 10 jobs, 100 MB multiplied by 10 would be consuming 1 GB of space. All right. So imagine that you are running hundreds of jobs a day that would eat up all your space on your Jenkins machine. If you don't want that to happen. Now, there are some more options that you'll be looking at. Very first option is discard old builds, which is here, the first option. So I would be discarding all my old builds. If you want to keep it for 7 or 8 days, you could add your values here that I want to keep all the builds for last 7 days. Okay. Or if you want to keep last 5 builds, you could place it here. So I want to keep last 5 builds. So I would be placing 5 in this text box. If you want to pass parameters to the build, external parameters, I'll show you how to do it. But let's first get to the deployment phase. If you don't want to have this build triggered, you want to disable it altogether, so you could click on disable build, and you could have the jobs running in parallel too. Okay, what's parallel execution? So on this machine, on the dashboard, if you see here on the left hand side, which says build executor status, there are 2 executors present on this machine. 2 executors as in there are 2 parallel threads that would be taking care of the jobs. If you want to run a third job, your third job would be placed in the waiting queue. It will not execute in parallel. Okay, if you're talking of one single job, that single job is executed only once. So at a given point in time, you would be having only one single copy of the job running on any given thread. Okay, that's a limitation that Jenkins puts by default. But if you want to have multiple copies of the job running in parallel, why would you have want to do so? You would want to do so if the job has nothing to do with the code. Okay, it's not messing up with the workspace. It can run in isolation and does not hamper each other's maybe process area or memory area or whatever the resources they are sharing. They have nothing to do with that. In that case, you'd be running the job in parallel. Okay, Just like a job, let's say you want to send some emails to the people. You could have multiple jobs running in parallel to reduce the load. Okay, it has nothing to do with the code which is kept in the workspace. So you could also increase the executors. So if you want multiple executors, you could click on manage Jenkins, go to configure system, which is the first option, and then you choose number of executors, increase it to the amount of cores that you have. Again, if you have a 32 core CPU, you could make it as 32. If you have 4 core CPU, keep it as 4. Okay, you don't want multiple executors to be there and eventually increase the load on your machine. Okay, that's not what we are trying to do here. So I've increased this executors from 2 to 4, and you can see that I am now able to run 4 parallel copies of any of the job, or any 4 jobs to be executed at once. For my current job, if I want multiple copies, I could say execute concurrent builds. If I want to run multiple copies of my jobs, I would say execute concurrent builds if necessary. Currently, I am disabling it. All right, so these were the options. Now, source code management, build triggers, now the build step. Once you have the code on your disk, what do you do with it? So any of the steps that I've mentioned, like checking the syntax or checking the semantics, building the code, compiling it, or doing all the stuff together, you could place the build steps here. Every build steps is going to be a command. There is going to be some utility. Maybe you are using JUnit for testing. You are using CMake for compiling or make for compiling. Anything that you use, you would be adding a step here, and that would be a command. Let's say make. I would be using make for um, my fake project. Okay, so there was a project that we have talked of that would be installed on multiple operating systems. Now make would be taking care of compiling those source code files. Okay, if you want to do so, you could type in the command here. Now that's my first step. If you want to add another build step, you could be adding another execute shell command. Okay, you could add Windows batch command as well if you are running those jobs on Windows instead of Unix machines. Now there are two more, Ant and Maven. Now Ant is a general level build architecture. We can use Ant along with any of the different languages like Python or PHP or Java. Maven is specifically created for Java, okay, which says that I would be using convention over configuration. And the convention is that your files should be kept in src folders, your tests should be placed in test folders, your files should be the dependency files should be kept in lib folders, and all those kind of things which are already present or defined with Maven. We'll talk of Ant and Maven in detail in the coming classes, but for now the important part is that you can place multiple build steps, and all you want to do is add a build step from here and keep adding your commands that you want to fire in the workspace folder. Currently I'm just going to fire one command, which is rsync all the files from the workspace onto another machine, where the machine IP address would be 192.168.56. Now that's my Apache server. Let me see what the IP address is. 56.146. Now this is syntax for rsync. Rsync source to destination, and destination should be mentioned in as such syntax, where you also place the user that you want to use in rsync. Okay, so that is the command that I want to fire, and the path where the file should be deployed is var www html. All right, so that's the only build step that I am going to place for now. Apply, save, try to build it. Have we tried firing rsync command? No, we haven't. So do we expect this to work? Maybe, maybe not. No, it hasn't worked. So it says that's a failure. We were not able to fire the rsync command. It says uh, connection unexpectedly closed. There was error in rsync protocol data stream code 12, blah blah blah. So it hasn't worked. The problem was host key verification was failed. So like I said, we first need to handle the stuff in the manual. So manually, let's fire this command. I'm moving again to my Jenkins machine. This is my Jenkins box, and here the code is kept at varlib Jenkins folder. There would be multiple subfolders in there. We'll talk of these subfolders in detail. Okay, first let's fix the stuff that we want to fix. I'm moving to a folder called jobs. In jobs there would be the folder called git test, which is my job name. Inside this there would be a folder called workspace, and there would be the code that I've just checked out, index.html. Let's fire the command rsync. All the commands that Jenkins would be firing on your machine would be using the Jenkins user, not anything else. So the command is rsync dot star dot slash star to some machine 168.56. The IP address is 146.146, and the path was var www html. Okay, so we should be able to fire this command without any human interaction. That's the must. So currently it is asking for something. That means we need some human interaction to be done. That's not how you would automate the stuff. So what I'll do is I'll pass this for now, also asking the password. We'll enter this for now and try if the command would work. It says permission denied on the target server, so let's fix it on the target server. On the target server, the permissions are given to the root user. I need to change it, so I'm changing the ownership to the user that I'm using for transferring the files. So HTML ownership has changed. Okay, now we should be able to run this command at least. It's asking for password. Now another human interaction is required here. The command worked, but we were required to type in the password. Okay, so I will quickly tell you how to set up passwordless authentication onto these machines. For setting up passwordless authentication, very first you need a public and private key for yourself. Okay, so when we say passwordless authentication, we are not making it unsecure, but we are making it more secure by adding the keys. So for making it, the command is sh-keygen, generate a key. Do not enter any passphrase, go with the defaults. I'm just hitting enter on my machine, and that's the passphrase key that was the key, public and private key, was generated for us at these particular paths. That is generally placed in the user's default profile path, whatever it might be. Okay, what's next? Then we have to copy those keys which are generated onto the target machine for authentication. So I would be placing it there. The command is ssh copy id -i, install the key on the machine using the user, my username. So any user that you would be using. Now this was the syntax, right? The same thing we are trying to connect. So I'm copying the key onto the same user onto the same machine where I want to deploy the code. Hit it once, it would ask for the password, type in the password. Once authenticated, it would add the key there onto the target machine. Now next time you hit your rsync command, it should not ask you for any of the passwords. Done. No passwords is being asked. Okay, don't worry about this for now, but try to remember it. If you don't, we'll cover it again in the next class. I see that we need some more time here. We will not be able to finish up with the stuff. um, doesn't matter, it's good that I'm slowing down. There's a lot to cover in Jenkins. Let's first check whether the rsync command worked for us or not. Git test, build now. That's a success. So we are able to push the code onto that Apache box. Okay, so if it is able to push the code there, and on my Apache machine, if I type in curl localhost, it should give me the result of the file that I have just pushed. It says instead of giving me HTML output, it's giving me output. This is a Jenkins test for job trigger. And where is this content coming in from? It is coming in from a file which is HTML index.html. All right. So what have we left from Jenkins? We have actually left a lot of things. We want to get into details of Jenkins. So what we have left is folder structure, installation background. What happens in the installation when we set up things? Okay. Then we would be setting up slaves in Jenkins. We would also see passing parameters, setting security, all right, and firing commands on remote machines. Now these are the things that we would be covering in Jenkins. So I'll prefer to slow down on Jenkins because that's the important part. Other parts you could practice on your own. But a few of the tools that I would be really stressing on is configuration management using Puppet and Jenkins, because these are the most important tools in any DevOps person's life. All right, so that was all from my side for today. If you have any queries or doubts to ask, you can please ask now. We can also have the question and answer round at every, beginning of every class. So you could also put them forward tomorrow in the morning. Actually, we were supposed to be covering continuous integration with Jenkins completely in today's class, but let's take a few more. At least in tomorrow's class, we should be able to finish on Jenkins. Okay, so that's all. Anything that you want to ask or have any suggestions or feedback, queries, doubts, anything?
Hello, Ashish, Murli here.
Hi, Murli.
Yeah, can you once peep into my machine log? I'm not able to configure the DNS. When I put like if I configure, I'm getting like 10.0.2.5. So if I Google that IP related to version machine, it's saying like something like private. So can you clarify me like
Okay,
any strange? Can you
I'm
share my
making you
screen?
making you a presenter so that
Yeah.
you can share your screen. So I've made you a presenter now. You can share
Yep.
your screen when you are ready,
Yep.
and let me have a look at your machines.
Like, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Can you check notice? I have built one DNS. I have cloned one machine at DNS. Please can you like check now what exactly I have done from your end?
I'm requesting keyboard and mouse control. If you could give me that.
Sure, it's with you.
Uh, it's tough for me. Can you handle it?
Yeah,
Just open up the settings of this DNS machine.
this one. Okay.
Yes. Show me the
This is
network tab.
yep.
Adapter 1 is not adapter 2. Can you show me adapter 2? It's
Yeah.
host only. Awesome. Click on OK or close it. Get to the machine, the DNS machine.
Yep.
All right. Can you type in ifconfig?
Sure.
Okay. So there are just two adapters here. Okay. LO is the loopback adapter, so we are not concerned about it.
Mm-hmm.
ETH1 and ETH2, sorry, ETH0 and ETH1 should be present. Currently, you are looking at only one single adapter. Okay.
Okay.
So you'll have to set up adapter 2 manually.
So
So
like
open up a
how
file.
can you guide me that?
Yeah, sure, it was covered in our classes as well. So you could open up a file on the machine itself. On the machine itself. No, no, not
Okay.
the settings part.
Yeah, yeah,
On the
sorry.
DNS machine itself.
Yeah.
You could get to first sudo. Do
So
sudo su.
sudo.
Yeah,
One
sudo
second.
su. Type in your password. Open up a file which is at slash etc slash network slash interface.
One second. Slash etc slash network.
Yeah, use tab. It would automatically,
Other one. That's it.
yeah, network, and inside of it there should be interface.
One second. I'll list that.
No, no, Vim wouldn't give you those.
Sorry.
You don't have to save it. You are actually messing up with the file structure. You can just say Q. So don't type in W. Don't type in W. Just say
Okay.
Q and exclamation mark. Okay. Open up the command.
I need one second. Go to the network slash. What is the file name?
Let me. It's interfaces. You can tab it, right? That's the file. Now here, auto eth0, iface eth0, inet dhcp. Now write or add two more lines after it.
Here.
No, after the last one, at the end of this file, you have to
Yeah,
add two
got
more
it.
lines. You could go to the end of the line and then hit enter.
Sorry, yeah, got it. Got it.
Okay, now add another line that says auto eth1.
Auto.
Not there, not there. Below it.
Yeah, I got it. Sorry. Auto.
Auto eth1.
Just
Auto
one.
space eth1. Exactly the same. You'll have to copy the above lines. Okay, just write as it is. Auto eth1, then type iface eth1 on the next line.
Sorry.
On the next line, you need
I,
to type in iface eth1,
I,
iface, exactly
I
the same
face.
as it is written above.
Yeah, got it. Got it. I face ETH1.
Inet dhcp,
That's it.
inet dhcp.
Oh, same.
Okay, so save this content now. Escape colon
Yeah, yeah.
wq. All right, and now you do if up eth1,
If
if up if up space eth1. All right, now type in if config.
one. Yeah, now I
Great.
got it.
Now you have two interfaces, eth0 and eth1. You should be able to connect to this machine now. Now,
Got
for
it.
the DNS to work, can you show me your, okay, does your DNS configuration work in the first place?
Like,
Have you tried it?
let me check. Like, if I done
NS
that,
lookup, NS lookup on DNS. So dns.example.com.
yeah, I have configured that.
Yeah, works.
Yeah, yeah, now it's fine. It's
Is that the correct IP address? I guess not.
not. I need to change that.
Okay, can you check the result.conf file?
Just email
Vim space
slash
etc
slash resolve.
resolve.conf.
Yeah.
Okay, so the name servers are different. You need to add your name server in the list. So what you could do is add the very first line,
Yeah. And remove this
change it.
like
Yeah, you could change it to your own name server. Your own name server is the IP address of this machine, which is currently 192.168. Whatever IP address is.
I have not seen exactly what is that. This I do. I'll look for my end sites. Okay, I got it now. So like this, I missed that I am not able to add that extra adapt. What is this?
Okay, so
Hmm.
give it a shot. If it doesn't work, we can cover it up in tomorrow's session.
Yeah, that's right. I'll try to. Yeah, I'll do it today. If not works, I'll come back tomorrow. That's fine.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Uh, I'll take back your control. Okay,
Sure,
so
sure.
I'll make myself present.
Okay.
So, all right, people, that was everything from my end for today. We'll meet again, same time tomorrow. And thanks, Krishna.
Thank you, Ashish. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, people, for attending this session. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes. Bye, Ashish. Bye. Have a great day.